Welcome to a very special episode of Size Previews. As always, I'm Luke Matthews, joined by Chris Spins, and I guess as we always used to say, sit back, relax, and let's get into it. So I guess we kind of know why we're all here, don't we?
Yeah.
But I think before we start, throughout the year, we've not actually done any episodes talking about any of the stories. And I think to talk through the stories, we need to start probably at the start of the process. We've had a lot of questions around why these cities. And I think the first thing, and that's sort of the only thing we'll say on it, we've never actually done anything for a 5-year interval. A lot of big hitters will be coming back in 2030, rest assured.
And maybe some new cities.
Potentially. But from this side, we wanted to add layers and dimensions to the sort of the City Stage programme and the lineage. They're extensions of stories that you know and be familiar, and I think that was the celebration this year, but we didn't want to dilute and take away from the big sort of 10-year gap. So I guess we'll start with Shanghai. I remember in lockdown when we dropped that image of Shanghai, that's the first time I remember it just going, it felt like this is something going off.
Yeah.
It was a new experience altogether. We'd obviously done 2 shoes.
Yeah.
But that third shoe felt like it cemented it into like, this is an iconic series.
It surprised me at the time because obviously we took it into that Twin City space and it was a bit of a, not a weird one, but not many people would have expected us to go there. So at the time it surprised me, and even more so, I think it surprised me this time, the reaction we had to it when we brought it through. Do you mean? I think not many people were expecting it again. Do you mean? And when we did bring it, I think the initial like kind of moment we had around it was massive.
My nervousness around the original Shanghai was for what is a City Series shoe, having the contrasted heel and stripes. It felt quite radical and bold thing to do, but then also it felt like the right city to do it on when you're looking at what we were referencing.
I mean, my nervousness come from more the fact that the storytelling felt quite kind of like surface level, like, as in we didn't really dig as deep into some of the other, we have done with some of the other cities. But you can't really get away from it when you look at Shanghai. We kept them coming back to the same kind of like skyline thing, and I think that's what we've executed really well from both the shoes.
That was almost our starting point for this one. Obviously, the thing that everyone thought we was going to do was bring out the white sample, which we have shared a few times.
Yeah.
And that started off the process for this year. We did start with that, but again, we wanted to give a new experience. That shoe still exists in the archive. One day we might bring it out. But that was the starting point for this. We wanted to move away from it, and again, something that would sit and complement its original in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think the reason we should thank Shanghai from this one is because that's what started this whole journey. The rest of these shoes on the table wouldn't exist if we would not have been looking at rebringing back that cream one.
Now, Dublin is slightly different in the sense where we've actually done, on this table, we've done more Dublins than anything else.
I mean, there's a massive lineage, and every one of them was better than the other one, I would say, like the Brown one, the Taiwan, the St. Patrick's Day one. And a lot of the other ones were like really kind of like looking about what's gone on in the past and kind of bringing them back, whereas this is like a full, fresh take on Dublin. Quite obvious, but Dublin, Guinness, there's no way of avoiding that.
No, and I also like the fact that obviously we referenced St. Patrick's Day, but we actually released this on St. Patrick's Day as well.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I think one thing, again, we talk around from the whole collection perspective is like materials. We were really keen to get leather on a couple of the shoes.
Yeah.
This leather is probably an unusual colour to bring into leather, but it wears in so nice.
Exactly, and I think what we always going about details on the previous episodes we've had, that's one of our big things, and I think it's that footbed hit of red that for me does it. Like, that's the detail. That's if you look at that old kind of like signage, you'll always see that little script of red writing on it, and I think it kind of like completes that storytelling.
We'll have to try and dig it out, but we did actually originally sample the shoe with red instead of gold foil, and it looked a lot more contemporary as a shoe. We felt in the end it didn't sit as a whole collection. We did sample it as well on the Liverpool and putting yellow on it, but again, coming back to a series and again a collection of 6 shoes, it did jar just being the one different, but it did look really good. And I think from our side we've seen things like Trieste and that in the past when it's popped in the green. It's something that we might revisit. We have done it on Vienna recently, but it's something that just didn't feel special enough to do it on this shoe. But the pop on the footbed and the lace, that was enough. So coming on to Liverpool, this silhouette in general is probably the most special on the table for me, in the sense that that day when we turned up in 2020 outside the store on Bald Street, and there was probably 500 people outside, it felt like this was the ultimate platform and foundation that everything else was built off.
Yeah, it was an epic moment. I mean, for for us, obviously, we've kind of took on the mantle of the City Series in 2020 from what had happened previously in 2010. And it was, I'm not saying it was pressure, but there was a bit of a weight on our shoulders. And when you get the Liverpool store at 6 a.m, where it was, and you see 300 people queuing, camping out since the Wednesday of the Friday launch, whatever it was, it was a moment. And I think that's why Liverpool, for me, is always the one that's kind of the most special.
Yeah, and there's also a pressure around creating a city for the first time.
Yeah.
And creating the OG, like what should the OG Liverpool be? That was also a lot of pressure. There was obviously certain colours we had to stay away from, and that's the same for this shoe. And it was obviously like, whatever we do is going to go down in time as the OG.
Exactly. But I mean, like you said, we stay away from the reds and the blues, but I mean, it took us a while to get to that green and yellow. There's various stories. I almost don't even want to tell the story now because there's so many different stories. It's become this kind of myth of how we got to the green.
It just needs to stay as a myth.
But for this one, obviously, we've got a bit of a theme, and as we go through the rest of the shoes, you'll see there's a definite musical theme on some of the shoes. And what kind of band is more synonymous with Liverpool than the Beatles, ultimately? And I think we wanted to, rather than doing an album cover or something a little bit more obvious, we kind of like went and looked at kind of where that band was birthed, and that's the Cavern, and there's that mural on the back of the wall, and we selected what we felt were the best colours, and it's just worked really well.
Yeah, and again, similar to what we said on Dublin, we did sample this shoe with more yellow on it. We did it with a yellow heel, we did it with yellow on the footbed, yellow writing. We actually had a version with the yellow brand on the tongue. But again, it didn't feel right on this side of a City Series shoe. So again, it's things we might look at in the future, but as this series, it had to stay as purest and clean as possible, and to also sit alongside its 2020 compatriot. So when we come on to Birmingham, I think when you look at that original 2010 series, a lot of people have that as the ultimate grail.
It's the iconic one in it for a lot of people, I'd say, massively. So again, there was a bit of pressure there to get this one right.
And I think from our side as well, when we looked at probably both sets actually, the dark horse in both was the black leather base options, probably just because how wearable they were. Yeah. So Cardiff and Stuttgart, you see so many people wearing them.
Yeah.
And so many times when it's raining outside, that's the one you go to. We were really keen to get leather into this series, but we didn't want to force it in a sense where it didn't make sense. But when we had this sort of music gateway and link to a lot of the stories, it just happened where all the stars aligned, didn't it?
It was one of the easiest ones I would say to get to. The final thing, there wasn't many samples, and the storytelling just come together perfectly. I think, like I say, again, coming back to this music theme that we kind of like based some of the shoes around, we've just asked ourselves, who's the biggest band in Birmingham? I mean, some people might disagree, but for us it was Black Sabbath, and then the most iconic album's got to be Paranoid. And literally you look at the album cover, and within 2 minutes we decided the colours on the shoe. And the fact it was leather then kind of ties back into that kind of like Black Sabbath, Aussie feel about the shoe as well. And then perfect year that he had the concert in July as well. So I think everything just felt like it came together amazingly.
I think obviously the most special thing, I mean, I remember at the time we got a call from the council in Birmingham, and as soon as they said it, I was like, we're definitely getting into trouble for working on a shoe.
Well, it was because of Sharon had got in touch with the council, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was actually not that at all. It was the fact that they'd said, we're getting the keys to the city presented to Black Sabbath, and would we like to present the band with the shoe? So it was a very, very special moment. I think it was the Tuesday night of the week of the farewell concert. And there are several pairs out there in the ether that don't have one of 2025 on the shoe. They have that, and they have the band members' initials on. So there's some very, very special pairs out there. And we were actually very, honoured and gifted to the pairs to Ozzy on the night. So it was a very special moment for us. It almost made the shoe even more special now, obviously everything that's happened since. And again, I look at the whole series, it's such an easy wear because of that black leather.
Yeah.
But then you add the layers of storytelling to it. The shoe on itself looks great by itself, but when you add all the sort of space in between around it, it's iconic.
It's mad because I don't want to sound cliche about it, but because they're just shoes at the end of the day. But these shoes have created moments. Like we were talking about Liverpool earlier, we were talking about the Aussie shoe. Do you mean they create real moments and memories? So it's sometimes it probably goes beyond that a little bit.
Yeah. Now coming on to Glasgow, I think we probably can't talk about Glasgow without talking about the original Glasgow. It's the most controversial shoe in the whole set, I would say, because it's not on a traditional gum tool, it's on a white tooling. Now, that does split opinion. There are a few pairs around. I'm sure it was Al or Rob in Glasgow that sole swapped it. I can't remember who it was. Just in the comments, correct me. I think it looked better.
Well, I mean, my opinion, I'm not saying my opinion's right, it does look better.
But then there's also something really special about the original being on white as well for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, it made it look different to the rest of the pack. And when we're coming back to what we've done, it almost felt like we kind of wanted to go up because it was controversial,
yeah.
Wild card. We wanted to do something that was classier. And just a little bit, I don't want to like using the word easier, but just a bit more kind of like traditional, should we say?
Yeah, well, ironically though, the original Glasgow's now, they're that old that they've started to like yellow, so it almost looks better now.
Yeah.
But when we came onto the thought process, again, it's channeling very similar to what we did in Liverpool. We could have gone down the bands route. There was a couple of bands we did reference at the time. We have got CADs and designs of bands and implicated on the shoe, but we felt there was a very special venue that it just made sense to.
I mean, King Tut's is probably one of the most iconic venues in Glasgow, and obviously in the year that seems to be the year of Oasis, like what better time to do a shoe where that band was kind of like originally found. But yeah, we did it, and it's I think it's come together perfectly. The colours apply themselves to the shoe really well. And the fact that we managed to actually do the launch out of King Tut's made it even more special.
I think from our side, like that is probably not to be underestimated. A lot of times we do stories and we nod to it, and it's almost just like an interpretation of it. The fact we did it based on King Tut's and then launched it in King Tut's in partnership with them, it felt like it just almost authenticated the shoe, it validated it, and then it just took it to a new level altogether. And I guess that brings us to today, to Manchester. Obviously, we're sat in Manchester now on the day of the launch, and here it is. I think we can't talk about Manchester without talking about how it started. I know Mike and Gary did the shoe originally in 2002 for the Commonwealth Games, and there's been a short lineage. There's not many models in the series, there's 3 or 4, but they're all of a certain look and feel, a certain palette. I think straight away when it came to Manchester, we firstly felt we had to pay homage and respect to that. We could have gone on so many different routes. We've talked about music a lot today. We had versions of this shoe that look completely different, but we felt it wasn't the right time to take the shoe into a new space. We wanted to be very careful and pay a lot of respect to what's happened previously on it.
I think because that shoe's held in such high regard, more so than the other ones, that's what the tough part of it was it was finding something that still feels credible against the OG, which we struggled with it, if we're being completely honest, hence the reason we kind of went for this. And then, I mean, the execution's amazing anyway. I think you forget, because it's a long time since you looked at that shoe, how the materials are applied to it. You've got the reflective hits on there, you've got that kind of canvas kind of underlay as well. So it is different anyway, but it was just tough to try and move away from them traditional colours.
Yeah, I mean, we say it's tough. We've got like 10 or 15 different versions, but we also felt
that was the best one.
It was the right thing to do. And we see so many comments online saying, "Oh, it's lazy, it's just boring." It's like it isn't lazy. I think it's making something classic and timeless and paying respect to something iconic, isn't it? And I think what we wanted to do was really speak to the original as well. So you referenced the materials and the reflective stripes. All the materials are one-to-one the same as its twin, and even down to the fact that the gradient of the compound or the rubber is of a shade of red compared to the original of the shade of the blue. And obviously one thing we did really want to make sure is we pay respect to what Gary set out to do when he first created the shoe. The same way that us earlier talking about Liverpool, in 10, 15 years time if someone else was working on Liverpool, we'd like to think they'd do the same in terms of paying respect to that thought process.
Exactly. I think like a big one for me is as well, when you go and stand in the queues with these guys on a Saturday morning when we've got them, the Manchester's the one that you kind of see quite a lot. I almost feel like this, to a certain extent, could be that replace that shoe. If you know what I mean, is like one of the most popular ones in the queues. Which that kind of excites me to say what shoes that we've worked on in the queue as well. Yeah,
and it felt the right crescendo to finish the year on as well. It felt like the moment to go off in a high and to then say, let's see what we've got coming for 2030 in terms of taking it to a new space altogether.
What have we got coming?
We'll wait and see. So I think the last thing we want to mention is we've got a very, very special competition coming up, haven't we?
Really?
We do. Act surprised.
Yeah.
We're actually giving you the chance to win the whole pack. And if you head over to the Size Instagram channel, you see all the details in there, but the draw will end on New Year's Eve. So head over there now, enter the competition, and you'll be in for a chance to win the whole set. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with all the other content we've got coming on. And we'd love to know any thoughts, feedback in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in 2026.